This week we are going to cook. Well, today at least we are going to talk about cooking. Thursday we're actually going to be in Karen's kitchen doing a little bit of cooking. But I want to share some thoughts today about food and cooking before we get in Karen's kitchen. If you've read any of Michael Pollan's books, you know that he's got a lot of us thinking about the answer to this question. Where does our food come from? It's a question that he's answered in many of his last books and really is his mission to make a difference not only in his and his family's lives, but to make a difference in the globe regarding the food system. His books look heavily at agriculture, which is something in modern life we've lost track of. 75 years ago, no one needed to write a book about where food came from. We all knew where food came from. But this book, Cooked, drove it a little closer to home, especially for me, when he asked himself this question: what was the most single important thing we could do as a family to improve our well-being and our health? And the answer was cook. He had a son in high school when he started this journey and was really concerned about creating a space to get closer to his son before his son left for college. Food had been a really big deal to him, but cooking the food, although he liked to cook, wasn't really holding that much interest for him until he began to research the art of cooking and what it might do for him and his son. He realized in such big ways that cooking was the link from where food comes from, which he'd been studying for years, to how we digest it. We and the corporations are the link. He calls what corporations do with food, food processing. And he calls what we do with food, cooking. He came to see that the corporations cook very differently than people do. They use huge amounts of fat and salt and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your cooking. Those three attractive and cheap ingredients. When they're layered just so, they become addictive. In the industry, of course, they don't call it addiction. They call it craveability and snackability. Cooking, Michael discovered, has a huge bearing on our health. Who's cooking your food? The middle link of the food chain. Home cooking is at a free fall in America. It's been declining since the mid-60s. Processed food has become more prominent, and the fast food chains have taken over. In America, we spend 27 minutes on average a day cooking and 4 minutes cleaning up. I'm not sure what that's about. As rates of cooking have declined, rates of obesity have increased. In countries where cooking rates are higher, obesity rates are lower. He got curious about that. And he got curious about the fact that at the precise moment in history when Americans were abandoning the kitchen and handing their food prep over to corporations, we began spending much more of our time thinking about food and watching other people cook food on TV. Americans spend way less time cooking meals than any other nation. Yet at the same time, we are talking more about cooking food, watching more cooking shows, reading more about cooking. We're even going to restaurants so we can watch food be prepared live. Professional cooks have household names, some of them as famous as athletes. And the same activities that many of us find as drudgery has now been elevated to a spectator sport. Millions of people spend more time watching cooking than they actually do cooking. He found it interesting that some other chores in America have been outsourced, like darning socks and sewing and changing oil in our car. Those things were kind of immediately dropped from the conscious awareness of Americans. But cooking somehow feels different. Cooking has an emotional power, a connection that we don't want to shake, and we shouldn't shake. And by the way, his book wasn't about women cooking in the kitchen. He believes that cooking is far too important to be left to one gender or one member of the family. Both men and women and children alike need to be in the kitchen too, not just for fairness or equity, but because they have so much to gain by being there. Michael decided that the best way to encourage people to cook was to remind them what a beautiful and miraculous work it is. We've been brainwashed to think that cooking is drudgery, or it's a chore, or we don't have time for it, or that we don't have the skills to do it. Advertising somehow has got us thinking that we don't have time, or we're a loser if we have time to cook. His belief, and I love this so much, is that the cook occupies a special place in the world, standing squarely between nature and culture. Both realms are transformed by cooking. And so in the process, so is the cook. Some facts to get you thinking. Half of all calories consumed by children at home come from fast food. We are letting corporations cook our food, and because of it, obesity and type 2 diabetes is on the rise. In 2003, Harvard study found that most of the increase of obesity could be explained to the rise of food preparation outside the home. They found that the more time a nation devotes to food preparation at home, the lower its rates of obesity. Here's one that just shocked me. Gas stations make more money on food sales than they do gasoline. Corporations engineer the food we eat to make us want more. 46% of meals will be eaten alone today. We eat in the car, we eat on the run, we eat walking, we eat alone. Here's some inspiration to get you thinking though. When we eat, we are taking nature into our bodies. Our most profound engagement with the natural world happens on our plates. 3 times a day, we get to express our values to food. We are giving up the conversations when we don't prepare food and eat at home that we used to have around the table. The best time to talk to a teenager is over food prep when you're in the kitchen together. Here's a question we all need to be asking. Who is going to teach our next generation to cook? In ancient Greece, the priest, the butcher, and the cook were the same person. Meat was very special and it was a sacrifice. Cooking is about a series of relationships. It links not only us to the people we feed, but the people who grew our food, the plants and the animals who gave themselves to us. You can reclaim the present when you cook. Did you know that? When you're stirring the pot, just stir the pot. When you're chopping an onion, just chop the onion. Be present. Mealtime is where we teach our children the manners they need to get along in society. Conversation, grace, being present, sharing space with others, taking turns, staying away from media, real connection. Michael Pollan's rules for eating, some of you have probably heard it. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And his next rule, if you can do it, cook. He also said in his book he doesn't have time every day to make elaborate meals, but he has some time during the week. So he makes big meals and freezes them. He plans ahead for leftovers. He borrowed ideas from mass production, from corporations, and he prepares in advance. He chops and dices and cleans and prepares. Sound familiar? Is any time less wasted? Any time more important? Any time less valuable than preparing something nutritious and delicious for yourself and for people you love? When you're sitting down for the next meal, think about the wonder, the animal that died for you, the plant that grew up out of the ground. Could you look at nature and the miraculous lessons as you buy your groceries next time? Prepare your groceries and cook a meal. Could you hold your vegetables and your fruit in your hand this week and marvel at where they came from? Could you hold the meat you eat and give thanks for the animal that gave their life? This week, find a healthy meal with lots of ingredients and prepare it. The best ingredients. Make it for yourself, make it for someone you love. Set a pretty table. Gather around. Give thanks for the bounty. Take nature into your body. Remember, the more time you devote to food preparation in your home, the healthier you'll be. Join me this week and cook. And then join me Thursday when I meet you in Karen's kitchen to talk a little bit more about cooking. See you later, friends.